The road was quiet, too quiet for a battlefield. The only sound was the low rumble of the engine and the soft hiss of dust settling behind her tires. She had been called just a driver so many times that the title had begun to feel like a weight she couldn't T-shake. But that afternoon, as the sun turned the desert into a shimmering oven, the weight shifted into something heavier, something that would decide who lived and who died. A sudden crack split the air. A bullet slammed into the hood beside her, and the truck jolted as if it had been slapped. She didn't scream. She didn't freeze. She only felt her heart thud harder against her ribs, like it was trying to climb out and run. The convoy ahead of her exploded into chaos and shouted. Weapons clattered. The radio screamed with warnings and confusion. And in the middle of it all, she realized something she had never wanted to admit. She was the closest thing to control anyone had. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're rewatching from. I love knowing who's listening. She was named Lieutenant Mara Hayes, but most of the unit still treated her like she was invisible. Drivers weren't supposed to be heroes. Drivers were supposed to follow orders and stay out of the way. She'd accepted that. She had trained hard enough to know the difference between acceptance and resignation. But in that moment, as the world erupted around her, she felt the old truth rise in her chest. The people she was driving were not just soldiers. They were her brothers. Her young brother in particular. He was somewhere ahead in the middle of the ambush, and she could hear the panic in the radio voice calling his name. She thought of his laugh, the way he used to call her mare when he wanted to annoy her. She thought of how he had begged her to stay safe, to not take risks, to not be like the others. She had promised him, and now the promise was tearing her apart. The enemy had pinned the battalion down in a narrow canyon. The walls were steep, the sun was merciless, and the air was thick with smoke and fear. The soldiers were trapped, their vehicles damaged, their supplies scattered. Every time someone tried to move, the enemy fire cut them down like reeds in a storm. Mara's hands tightened around the wheel. Her knuckles went white. She could smell the metal temps of blood, the dust of the earth, and the oil of her own truck. She could feel the heat radiating from the engine like a living thing. She drove forward. The first few seconds felt like stepping into a nightmare. Bullets pinged off the armor. Explosions rocked the ground. Men yelled, but the words were swallowed by the chaos. Then, through the smoke, she saw him, her brother, crouched beside a wounded soldier, trying to drag him to cover. His face was smeared with dirt and sweat, his eyes wide with fear. He looked like a boy pretending to be a man. She wanted to scream at him to get down, to stop, to live. But the truth was simple. He wasn't going to stop. Mara's mind flashed with a memory from training when an instructor had told her, "In war, the driver is the heartbeat. You decide when the body lives or dies." Now she understood what he meant. She hit the horn, not as a warning, but as a signal. Her truck became a shield, a moving wall of metal that swallowed bullets and spit out courage. She slammed the brakes in front of the pinned battalion, creating a barrier between the enemy and her brothers. Murmurs spread through the trapped soldiers like wildfire. "Who's driving that thing?" someone shouted. "It's Mara." A moment of silence. Then something like hope. Mara didn't wait for applause. She didn't want it. She only wanted to keep going. She jumped out, her boots hitting the hot ground. Her heart hammered. Her breath came fast, sharp, and thin. She looked at the men around her, faces smeared with grime, eyes burning with terror and fatigue. They were young, they were scared, and they were counting on her. A moral question hovered over her like smoke. Was she supposed to risk herself for them? Was she allowed to make a choice that might cost her life? The answer came in the form of a brother's voice, a radio crackling through the chaos. "Mara, we're pinned. We need cover. We need a way out." Her throat tightened. She thought of the lives she could save. She thought of the ones she might lose. Then she did the only thing she could do. She took the lead. Mara rallied the soldiers into a coordinated retreat. She directed the drivers, assigned positions, and kept the battalion moving like a tide, one synchronized step at a time. Her truck became a beacon. Her voice became a command. Her presence became a promise. She drove through the canyon again and again, each trip risking everything. Each time the enemy tried to stop her, each time she refused. The battalion began to move. Slowly at first, then faster, like a living organism finding its rhythm again. The enemy fire began to thin. Soldiers started cheering, not because they were safe, but because they were alive. When the last vehicle finally rolled out of the canyon, the battalion commander stood in front of her, his face wet with sweat and awe. He didn't call her driver. He called her a hero. The unit gathered around her, not in silence, but in a roar of gratitude. No, men clapped her shoulders, lifted her up, and for the first time, they saw her for what she truly was. Not a support role, not a background figure, but the heartbeat that kept them alive. Because sometimes, the strongest warriors are the ones you never expect. Because courage doesn't wear a title, it shows up when the world is burning. And in that desert, as dust settled and the sun dipped low, Mara looked at the road behind her and realized the truth she had always known. Bravery isn't about being seen. It's about doing what's right, even when nobody believes you can. If this story moved you, leave a comment and hit subscribe for more mission stories like this. Because real heroes don't ask to be noticed, they just keep driving forward.